Hey there, ready for another deep dive? Today we're going deep into what makes us, well, us. Not in like a philosophical way, more like the biological, historical stuff,
Yeah.
the really fascinating stuff. And we've got a great guide for this journey, The Third Chimpanzee by Jared Diamond.
It's a really fascinating exploration of human evolution. We're going to uncover some of the things that set us apart, how we behave, where we fit in, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and one of the first things that really struck me in the book is Diamond's question, what makes us different from chimpanzees? Because, like, genetically speaking, we're almost the same.
It's amazing how such small genetic differences can make such a huge impact, right? Diamond really breaks down the science behind this in a way that makes it understandable and intriguing. It's a reminder that to truly grasp what makes us human, we need to look back at the traits we share with our primate ancestors.
It's like we're more alike than different, but sometimes we're definitely not. And Diamond uses a really interesting example to illustrate this. Dog breeds. Like, picture a Great Dane next to a Chihuahua. They look like totally different species, but they can still interbreed.
Totally. It shows that appearances can be deceiving when you're talking about evolutionary lineage. And Diamond takes this a step further by bringing in molecular biology to map out our family tree. And what he finds is pretty mind-blowing, I have to say. Get this. Genetically, we humans are basically a third chimpanzee species.
Wait, a third chimpanzee? So are you saying we're more closely related to chimpanzees than gorillas are? That's crazy. I mean, gorillas and chimps, they just seem so much more alike than chimps and us.
That's right. It seems counterintuitive, but it's true. And to figure this out, Diamond uses a really cool tool called the DNA clock, which essentially uses the rate of genetic mutations to estimate how long ago two species shared a common ancestor. And get this, we diverged from chimps relatively recently, evolutionarily speaking, about 6 to 8 million years ago. And here's the real kicker, we share a whopping 98.4% of our DNA with them.
So that means that a mere 1.6% of our DNA accounts for all the differences between us and chimps. That's insane. So what exactly does that tiny sliver of DNA do to make us, well, human?
It's a powerful illustration of how these small genetic differences can have massive effects. That 1.6% difference accounts for everything from our larger brains and upright walking to our capacity for complex language. Diamond even uses the example of the Tay-Sachs gene to illustrate how even a single gene can have profound
It's like a
consequences.
chain reaction, right? One tiny change can set off a whole cascade of effects. It makes you appreciate the mind-boggling complexity of our biology. But Diamond doesn't just stop at comparing us to chimps. He also delves into how our uniquely human life cycle sets us apart, everything from finding a mate to raising kids to aging.
Yeah, and there's some really fascinating differences there too. I mean, think about it. Human females are the only primates who experience menopause. And then there's this whole mystery surrounding concealed ovulation.
Okay, concealed ovulation. You've got to break that down for me.
So basically, unlike many other mammals, human females don't show outward signs when they're ovulating. For most species, it's a pretty big deal. A clear signal to potential mates that it's time to make some babies.
They practically shout it from the rooftops. And we're just, well, more subtle about it. It just seems so counterintuitive. Like, wouldn't you want everyone to know when you're at your most fertile?
You'd think so, right? And that's exactly the question that has puzzled scientists for ages. Diamond presents several intriguing explanations rooted in our evolutionary history. One theory is that concealed ovulation actually helped to reduce conflict and promote cooperation within human societies. If males aren't sure when females are fertile, they're less likely to fight over access to them.
It's like less competition, more collaboration. It almost makes you wonder if that's how we evolved to be such social creatures.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? And it gets even more interesting when you consider that humans also engage in concealed copulation, meaning we tend to keep the actual act of mating private.
Concealed copulation. Okay, what does that even mean?
It's as straightforward as it sounds. We humans, unlike many other species, generally prefer a bit of privacy when it comes to, well, you know. And Diamond argues that both concealed ovulation and copulation played a significant role in shaping the complex social structures we see in humans today.
Wow, those are some pretty big societal impacts for something most of us probably never even think about. That's why I love these deep dives. It's like peeking behind the curtain of human behavior. But I'm dying to know, what are some of the other theories Diamond offers for this whole concealed ovulation mystery?
Well, one theory suggests that it actually helps to strengthen the bond between men and women. I mean, if a man isn't sure when his partner is fertile, he's more likely to stick around throughout her cycle. which, increases his chances of fathering her children.
Ah, so it's like a built-in biological incentive for monogamy. Who knew biology played such a big part in our relationships, right?
Exactly. And then there's another theory that Diamond proposes. Concealed ovulation might have evolved as a way for women to kind of avoid the pain and risks associated with childbirth.
Wait, hold on. How does hiding ovulation help with that?
Think about it this way. If a woman knows exactly when she's ovulating, she might choose to, avoid sex during that time to prevent pregnancy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But of course, that strategy would also mean, well, significantly reducing her chances of having children at all. Concealed ovulation makes it more likely that a woman will engage in sex throughout her cycle, increasing the likelihood of pregnancy, even if she's not consciously aware of her most fertile period.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. It's like this roundabout way of ensuring the survival of our species. Talk about a clever evolutionary strategy. But Diamond doesn't stop there, does he? He ties this whole concealed ovulation thing to another pretty, let's just say, interesting topic: adultery.
He goes there. He really digs into how paternity uncertainty, which is, kind of a big deal with concealed ovulation,
Yeah.
plays into that very primal drive to pass on our genes. And he even uses these great examples from the animal kingdom, like, did you know that birds can be unfaithful too?
Okay, I have to admit, I did not expect to be discussing cheating birds today, but I'm here for it.
It all comes back to our shared evolutionary history, right? And so Diamond talks about how different cultures throughout history have developed all these intricate social systems and rules, all in an attempt to, well, keep adultery in check. He even talks about how during the Tang dynasty in China, the emperors had this whole system set up to track their wives' menstrual cycles. They wanted to be absolutely positive that they were the fathers of any children. Can you imagine?
Wow, talk about taking paternity tests to a whole new level. It just goes to show how powerful these biological drives can be, shaping our behavior in ways we might not even realize. But let's shift gears for a bit. Diamond also dives into something completely different: the rise of agriculture and how it completely revolutionized the course of human history.
Absolutely, it was a total game changer. But he argues it wasn't necessarily all sunshine and roses either. I mean, yeah, agriculture allowed for bigger populations and led to the development of these more complex societies, but it also came with a whole new set of challenges, even health problems.
Really? I never thought about it that way. I just assumed agriculture was, a purely positive step forward in human history. Tell me more about these downsides.
Well, as farming societies became more complex, we started to see the emergence of social hierarchies, with a small elite controlling most of the land and the resources, while everyone else basically toiled away in the fields.
So not everyone reaped the benefits equally. What about those health issues you mentioned?
Living in close proximity to each other and to domesticated animals, well, it created this perfect breeding ground for infectious diseases. Plus, when researchers study ancient skeletons, they found evidence that the shift to agriculture actually led to a decline in overall health for a lot of people.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that our hunter-gatherer ancestors might have actually been healthier than early farmers?
Yeah.
That just seems so counterintuitive. How is that even possible?
It does seem strange, right? But the evidence is there. A lot of skeletons from early agricultural societies show signs of malnutrition, problems with growth, and higher rates of diseases, things like anemia. Diamond uses the example of the skeletons found in those burial mounds in the Illinois and Ohio river valleys.
Oh, right. Those were the people who adopted that corn-based diet, right?
Exactly. And their remains show a pretty dramatic decrease in health after the switch to agriculture. More cavities, more tooth loss, more signs of anemia. Even their average height went down compared to their hunter-gatherer ancestors. It's pretty clear evidence that something wasn't quite right with this new way of life.
Kind of makes you wonder if all progress comes at a price, doesn't it? Like 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
I think that's a great way to put it. And this whole idea of progress is something that Diamond challenges us to really think about. What does progress actually mean? And what are we willing to give up to achieve it?
That's a good question. But let's move on to another super interesting topic that Diamond tackles: the role of geography in shaping human history. Might seem kind of random at first, but he makes a really compelling argument that where we live has played a huge role in how our societies have developed.
Yeah, he stresses that it's about more than just, our physical location on a map. It's about what resources are available. Like, are there plants and animals that can be domesticated? How easy is it for people and ideas to spread to other areas? And believe it or not, even the orientation of continents has played a part. In fact, he even uses this literary reference, the Anna Karenina principle, to explain this.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one. Tolstoy and geography, who knew?
So it's based on that famous opening line from Tolstoy's novel, Anna Karenina. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Diamond uses it to talk about why some animals are easier to domesticate than others.
Okay, I would never have put Tolstoy and domesticated animals in the same sentence. Please, go on.
So, for an animal to be successfully domesticated, it needs to meet a whole bunch of specific criteria, right? Like it needs to be adaptable to different environments, it needs to be relatively calm, it needs to be able to breed in captivity. If it fails even one of these criteria, chances are domestication just isn't going to happen. And Diamond says the same principle applies to plants.
So it's like a checklist for domesticability, tick all the boxes, or you're out of luck.
Exactly. And he argues that this principle helps explain why some parts of the world, like the Fertile Crescent, for example, got a head start in developing agriculture and more complex societies. They just happened to have the right mix of plants and animals that were well suited for domestication.
Wow. It makes you think about how differently history might have turned out if, let's say, the Americas had more animals that could be domesticated.
Right. It's a fascinating thought experiment, and Diamond also explores how geography has influenced the spread of languages, too. He uses the example of Indo-European languages, which are now spoken across a huge part of the globe.
That's a lot of languages.
It is. And he traces their origins all the way back to, get this, the steppes of Eurasia, where these nomadic horsemen were able to spread their language and culture far and wide. And it's all thanks to this one key innovation, the domestication of horses.
Ah, so horses were like the ancient equivalent of, I don't know, tanks maybe, giving those early Indo-Europeans a major tactical advantage.
Exactly. And the spread of Indo-European languages is just one example of how geography has shaped the distribution of languages and cultures all over the world. It shows how interconnected everything is.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If like one little thing had gone differently, who knows what the world would look like today? But Diamond doesn't just focus on the past, does he? He also uses geography to look at the present, like why some civilizations are thriving, while others, well.
Yeah, he gets into some pretty heavy stuff there. He argues that the reason some societies thrived while others faltered isn't because some groups of people are inherently more intelligent or capable. He says it's more about those geographical factors we were talking about, like the types of plants and animals available, how easy it is for people and ideas to spread around, even the impact of things like diseases.
So it's not about being smarter. It's more about having the right resources in the right place at the right time. That almost feels like, I don't know, luck of the draw.
It's definitely more nuanced than that, but yeah, you're getting the idea. It's about challenging those traditional narratives we have about history. Of course, not everyone agrees with him, but it's hard to deny that his arguments make you think.
No doubt. It does make you wonder, though, if we're just products of our environment, are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past? Especially when you consider those kind of bleak examples Diamond gives about civilizations that collapse because they wreck their environment.
Yeah, those are tough stories. Like when he talks about the Anasazi people of Chaco Canyon, they cut down so many trees and the soil got so bad that they basically made their own land unlivable. And then there's that really sad story of Easter Island.
Where they cut down every single tree.
Everyone. Talk about an ecological disaster. It wiped out their whole population.
It's scary because it shows that we're not somehow immune to those kinds of disasters. It could happen to us if we're not careful.
Absolutely. That's one of the most important messages in Diamond's work. We have to learn from the past if we want to have a future.
It makes you think about our own trajectory, right? Like, where are we headed? Does Diamond offer any thoughts about the future of humanity?
He ends on this cautiously optimistic note, acknowledging the very real challenges we're up against. Things like environmental destruction and that ever-present threat of nuclear war.
Those are big ones for sure.
Right. But he also points out that humans have overcome massive obstacles in the past, like, hello, the environmental movement, the fact that the rate of population growth is slowing down, and we haven't had a nuclear war in decades. Those are all pretty good signs.
Okay, so maybe there's hope for us yet.
I think so. But Diamond's point is that it's not about blind optimism, it's about being informed and engaged and willing to learn from our mistakes.
We have to be active participants in our own destiny, right? Wow, this deep dive has been pretty incredible. We've gone from the dawn of humanity to our chimpanzee cousins, from the rise and fall of civilizations to pondering the fate of humanity.
It's been quite a journey. But that's what makes the third chimpanzee so thought-provoking. It doesn't shy away from the complicated reality of what it means to be human.
It definitely gives us a lot to think about. Like if we can learn from our past, maybe we really can overcome those self-destructive tendencies, right?
Mhm.
Maybe we can use our intelligence for good.
I'd like to think so. We're all in this together after all.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the third chimpanzee. We hope you enjoyed exploring some of those weird, wonderful, and sometimes even scary aspects of what makes us human.
Until next time.